Alright, today I'm going to be showing you how to remove a carburetor on a Kawasaki Prairie 400. I've got the seat removed already. If you don't know how to do that, check out my other videos. I go have an overview of the Kawasaki Prairie 400. And then we're going to pull two Phillips screws that are on this tank cover here. This is just a plastic cover over your fuel tank. And you're going to have to turn your handlebars. A lot of times if you turn your handlebars enough, you can fit your screwdriver down this area here or in front of the handlebars down this area. So pull those two screws, we've done that already, and then pull, there's two 10mm bolts right by where the seat hooks into on the frame that you'll have to pull those as well. Next thing, pull your fuel tank cap. And you want to be really careful not to drop dirt or anything down there. Make sure this area is clean. And when you're doing this, just be really careful when you're pulling this up that you don't knock dirt in there. Just pull it off carefully just like that. We're just going to set this aside here. And then we've got our fuel tank exposed here. Next thing we're going to do is turn your fuel off. And so that is it's sideways. So your knob should be running. I'll show you which direction it is. Your knob should be horizontal. And there's your knob there. And we're gonna go ahead and pull that fuel tank. Now we've got to remove your fuel tank shut off. And so that takes a Phillips screwdriver and just stick it down in there. If there's dirt and grime, it's just not wanting to turn like it should, take an air nozzle, blow into there. You're not going to damage it doing that. A lot of times what happens is mud and dirt and debris get stuck in there and you can't get your Phillips on the screw securely. So once we get that completely turned off, we can just go ahead and pull that knob off just like that, and we'll make sure that you keep that screw with it. Now your fuel tank is actually ready to come off. We've pulled these already. Those go through the fuel tank cover as well as the fuel tank. So you can lift your fuel tank up. You're not going to be able to go very far, but the front, there's no screws on the front. There's just rubber dampers that your fuel tank slides into. Now once you get the fuel tank to about this position here, you can see that the fuel line is exposed there. And I take needle nose pliers. You can take any pliers would do. And there's a little clip on there that you just have to kind of pinch together and pull down. And these aren't extremely difficult, although this one's being more difficult than normal. You just pull that down there. Next, you take that fuel line, and I kind of grab it and use the petcock to kind of pivot on. And sometimes that fuel line is, if it's never been off of there before, sometimes it sticks. I take and kind of twist it back and forth. Make sure you're on there really good so that you're not ripping that fuel line. You want to double check that before going back together, because it's a bummer deal when you get that entire thing back together and you are needing new fuel line. I'm going to set this fuel tank up here, make sure that it is secure so it doesn't drop off of there. Now we have our carburetor exposed. I'm going to bring it up here so you can see a little bit better. I may not be able to do this without setting the camera down, but we've got more Phillips screws that we're going to have to remove here. Each clamp, there's a clamp on the front of the carburetor, or on the engine side, and then there's a clamp on the back. And a lot of times you can get that from underneath. This is about all the body parts that you'll have to take off. You generally don't have to take off this air duct here. A lot of times you can get in there and get that clamp off without doing that. And you can see better than I can. Wasn't even really on that clamp right there. So as soon as we get that, those clamps loosened up, you want to make sure that they're very loose, because they can still hold on there. Even if you loosen them up just a little bit, sometimes what happens is once you pull that carburetor out, that boot doesn't flex enough to allow you to keep pulling if your clamps aren't loose enough. And this one, just a little bit more of a challenge here. We've got our choke cable coming in here, and we'll remove that, as well as the throttle cable cover here. And this you get to from the right side of the four-wheeler. It's about the only thing that you have to do on the right side. Sometimes it's easier to turn that carburetor once you get those clamps loosened up, but we're able to get this one where it is. Take this off, and we're gonna expose the throttle cable going down into the carburetor. And you can take now, spin that up. What I do, take another finger. A lot of times I'll take a pick, and it's gonna be very difficult to do with one hand, but you can slide it out, slide that cable out of that groove there. And I'm gonna go ahead and grab a 10mm wrench now and loosen that throttle cable. And that should allow us to get that cable off of that butterfly. So loosen this 10mm. Just the top one is all you have to loosen, a couple turns, and then you can pull the cable out like that. And then you can find that groove that's on that butterfly and slide that cable out. Now your cable's out, and we can go back to the other side, and we will pull that choke cable. Choke cable is a plastic cap, so you want to be really careful you don't damage that when you're removing it. Oh, it's a 12mm. Plastic cap, just go ahead and loosen that up. Couple turns generally, and you'll be able to loosen it up. A lot of times you can grab the rubber piece and just turn it by hand. You want to make sure that the area around the intake is on either side of the carburetor. Make sure that that area is clean from debris. Make sure there's nothing that's going to fall down into that intake when you pull it apart. And we were able to pull that plunger and the cap out. And now you're able to spin that carburetor freely. We've got a couple vent lines. You can see this vent line here. Just runs into the frame, and that just holds that vent line there. And that's simply what it is a vent line. So nothing hooked up to that at all. Down on the bottom of the carburetor, which you won't be able to see right now, is the bottom vent tube, and that will drain the fuel if the carburetor is bouncing around and fuel is flowing into that bowl faster than it can use the fuel, or it doesn't shut off properly. That bottom tab will have a hose connected to it. Your fuel in from your fuel tank is here. That runs down into that position there. And we'll see if we can get that carburetor off with one hand. Pull that boot, be careful not to rip it. Make sure no debris falls down inside there. And getting caught on the back intake boot here. These boots should be pliable, should be able to move them around pretty easily. And now the bottom drain that I was telling you about, that bottom line is getting caught. And then there's also another line, another vent line. If you can see it here, fuel in is here, like I said, and there's another vent there. And so we'll have to pull that off, and we'll remove that carburetor. But that's it. I'll show you how to clean that carburetor, clean out the debris that we dropped down in there. You want to take a rag, wipe this down. We were able to keep most of the dirt out of there, but you don't want any in there at all. So go ahead and wipe that down really good. And then what I do, if it's a couple days, if you have to order a carb kit or something, stick a rag in there, just keep any more debris from going down in there. So that is removing the carburetor on a Kawasaki Prairie 400. If you need some other videos, let me know what you're looking for, and check out the rest of my videos in my library.